You are known as a songwriter too. Please tell us about some of the songs you have written for other artists.
Well, most recently, there's a song that right now is #1 on the radio, Tropical Rain for Jessie J, which I brought to Jessie and Paul, and they loved it, and we tweaked it and turned it into a really nice song. And beyond that, in the recent past, I've written songs with people like Pat Kelly and Ron Bostad, who's been my main co-writer for many years. We've had cuts. We had a song that George Benson recorded, but it didn't quite make it to his album. I think he recorded about 22 songs, and it didn't quite make it. But the opportunity to produce and record George was really great, to work with him. And I've had a song with Denise Williams, a title cut of one of her records called This Is As Good As It Gets, which was a song that Ron and I originally wrote for the movie Baby Boom that starred Diane Keaton back in the 80s. And it came very close to being used in that film, but didn't quite make it. And then it had a second life and becomes a Denise Williams song.
We read that your first love is Brazilian music.
Yeah, well, just from being a kid and hearing Antonio Carlos Jobim records, the Wave record in particular, and Stan Getz and Charlie Bird, they did that jazz samba record. That was somehow kind of in my blood, in my ears somehow. And then I heard a record by Wayne Shorter called Native Dancer. Wayne Shorter was in Weather Report, one of my favorite groups, and he did this record, a solo record, that featured many Brazilian musicians, Airto and Flora Purim, and Milton Nascimento, and Herbie Hancock. But Milton Nascimento, once I heard him, I got really excited and ended up getting all of his records, and I own every CD, record, LP that Milton has ever done. And he's one of the top artists of Brazil for the last 30 years or so. He's kind of like the Paul Simon or the Sting of Brazil. And I used to play this little jazz club called Harold's Rogue and Jar in D.C., and the cook there had been to Brazil. So we used to hang out after the gig, and I would go over to his apartment, and he would play me all these Brazilian records. And he lent me a stack this high of Brazilian LPs that he had bought. So I recorded them onto cassette, and I still have all those cassettes, and they're labeled with the artist and the titles, and everything else is Portuguese. All the lyrics, it's almost all vocal music, but it's just such great music. It's still my favorite stuff.
Well, we understand you're married with 2 boys. Tell us about your family.
Well, Yvonne's my wife, and I have 2 boys, Alex and Stevie, and I hear Alex practicing guitar in the other room. He's now really involved in guitar and plays a little piano, and he's also into acting and musical theater, too. He really gets off on that. And we have a great community theater out here in Thousand Oaks. There's actually a few different ones that he's been involved in. But the one in particular, it's really a great experience because they rehearse 5 nights a week for 6, 7 weeks. And then they put on the shows for 3 weekends, including matinees. So it's a real commitment and a lot of work.
We notice that you are well represented on YouTube, and you are an artist who is really into using Web 2.0 to your advantage. You've really embraced this?
Well, yeah, I think it's very cool. YouTube is fantastic. In fact, I go on YouTube for these vintage performance videos that you can find, all these old jazz masters, and then some really cool stuff, James Brown, and just stuff that you would never see otherwise. And then currently there will be people that will put up a little video the day after a show. There will be some video from a show that we just did, or a Peter White show, and I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, any chance to sort of cement that connection between people who are interested in your music in particular, or they're fans, or maybe they haven't heard of you, but somebody forwards them the video and they get to see something. That's cool.
So is anything exciting happening in your life that we haven't covered?
Well, looking forward to going to England to play with Peter White, and then there's some nice shows coming up in the fall and winter beyond that, doing some holiday shows coming up, and I was able to get Shelby Flint to come out of semi-retirement to do some more shows, and right now we're working on those dates, and they'll be up on my website as soon as we firm them up. And beyond that, going to Dubai next year in the early spring to play the Dubai Music Festival. That should be interesting. And any chance to get out and play is really, that's what I live for.
Well, thank you for speaking with us, Gregg.
It's been my pleasure.